Part 23. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 221. After 9 o'clock in the morning, Gao Jiwei parked his car at the entrance of the factory. He couldn't go in now, and the security guard stared at it with wide eyes. Leaning on the car and smoking a cigarette, feeling unspeakably suffocated, he turned his head and glanced at the security guard in the guard's room, and muttered to himself, "If you wait for the Lord, you will definitely be fired." In the golden autumn of October, the sky is high and the air is crisp, and the temperature in the morning dropped to about 10 degrees. The people in the north have already put on their long johns, and some of the trees on both sides of the road are already bare. Everything is showing that the winter is coming. On the road, you can see the black smoke of the tricycle pulling coal. When driving past, I saw a Santana turning around. Lu Feng lowered the car window, still fanning the air with his hands, and asked, "Why don't you go in?" "People won't let you in," Gao Jiwei muttered, his face full of displeasure. "Get in the car," Lu Feng greeted. The car stopped at the door. Lu Feng honked the horn, and the security guard sat there and glanced outside, ignoring him, took a sip from his tea jar, and then took a sip of the tea leaves. Lu Feng honked the horn with his hand, and the other party was a little annoyed. He stood up and opened the window and shouted, "What do you press? The factory area does not allow people who are not from the factory area to enter, don't you know?" After the other party finished speaking, he closed the window and cursed. Lu Feng turned off the car, got out of the car, and jumped in directly over the retractable door. Gao Jiwei followed and jumped in. The two opened the door of the security room and walked in. "What are you doing? What do you want to do?" The security guard put down the kettle that was ready to pour hot water, looked at the two of them a little uneasy and said, "You two are no longer the leaders of this place. Don't think I don't know how to change the dynasty and make trouble again. I called someone. Just the humming virtue, who will get beaten if you don't get beaten," Lu Feng scolded and kicked up with his foot. People from the security department ran over, and the original captain saw that it was Lu Feng, but did not dare to go in while standing at the door. Lu Feng opened the door and walked out, staring at the people in front of him, and said solemnly, "I'm still a shareholder here, let's get out of the way." "Get out of the way," the security captain waved his hand, everyone made way, opened the door, and Lu Feng galloped in with a kick of the accelerator. "Captain, he beat me. Except for the leader, outsiders are not allowed to enter the factory. I told them. They came in and beat me." The security guard cried with a bruised nose and a swollen face, "They are not from our factory anymore. You have the final say. The leader of the factory, you, a security guard, has the final say. The upper echelons are fighting with each other. What are you making a fool of? But yesterday, President Wang ordered that now is a special period. If you dare to let in messy people, I will lose my job. Don't you humming stand up and go to the toilet to smoke a cigarette? It's stipulated that we can't go to the toilet in this position. They came in when you were going to the toilet, blame you. Grow your eyesight, you deserve to be beaten." Lu Feng parked the car directly under the office building. There were already several cars parked in front of him. The factory used to equip Gao Jiwei with a Santana, but now Wang Yuxiao is driving. Many people in the office stuck their heads out to see that it was Lu Feng who came back, and all the offices were blown up in an instant. "It's President Lu. Mr. Lu is back, this time something big is going to happen. Aren't you going to question him for embezzling the factory's money? People are here, go and ask. Afraid of him getting a ball, go, ask him to go, our management jointly holds shares, why should he spend it?" Only one person shouted to find Lu Feng, the others, "You look at me, I look at you, but they don't move." Although Lu Feng is not often in the factory, His Majesty is still there. There are some things about him in the factory. Legends keep circulating. Not afraid? That's fake. Entering the corridor, there are people watching through the glass from time to time. Lu Feng can feel the eyes on him. Some are afraid, some are greedy, some are cowardly, some are sarcastic, and more are aggressive. When I arrived at the office of the general manager and the factory director, I found that there was no one there. I walked 2 steps forward to the chairman's office. When I opened the door, Wang Yueshao was sitting on the boss's chair smoking a cigarette. There were 4 or 5 management members sitting in front of him, and there were a pile of reports on the table. He was half lying with his feet on the desk. The people in front of him were smiling flatteringly and very respectfully. When the door was pushed open, Wang Yueshao frowned and said, "You don't know how to knock when you come in." When he raised his head and saw Lu Feng, he instinctively put his legs down. Wang Yueshao had met Lu Feng once, and he had a meeting in May. He had just been promoted to the middle management of the marketing department. On weekdays, the manager of the marketing department has the most contact. In his impression, Lu Feng only needs to say a word, and the people in the marketing department will have to run and break their legs, and the power of life and death is in their hands. Zhang Fengxia, that young and capable woman, he had thought about getting his sister in before. Wang Yueshao's younger sister is also considered a jade person, but after inquiring about it, Zhang Fengxia's family came back from studying abroad, and her identity and background are not simple, so she died of this heart. After a brief panic, Wang Yueshao remembered that he was the general manager now, and calmed down. "Don't know how to knock on the door. You're the general manager now, what are you doing in the chairman's office?" Lu Feng glanced at the people at the table and said, "It's none of your business, let's go out." Several people hesitated, all staring at Wang Yueshao. "It's too late to get out now," Lu Feng shouted sharply. A few people stood up and fled in a hurry. Gao Jiwei walked over and closed the door. Standing at the door, he looked like he was closing the door and hitting a dog. Wang Yueshao panicked and hurriedly said, "I tell you, it is against the law to beat people." Lu Feng sat down and lit a cigarette with a playful expression on his face. He looked at him and said, "You are in our city, go out and ask about it, and ask what the consequences of Lu Feng's beating are." Wang Yueshao already had sweat on his forehead, and his eyes were a little frightened. Many people had heard rumors about Lu Feng, which leader's godson, who knocked down the big guy in the next city in the dance hall. The relationship force was not him. Such a small person can compare. Now not everyone has a mobile phone. If you break your leg, you will break your leg. The weak will lose some money, and the arrogant will not care at all. What is a local emperor? I'm just a small person, don't make it difficult for me. Wang Yueshao sat there like a pint. "I'm not embarrassing for you, just ask you one thing, the security guard at the door won't let me in, did you tell me?" Lu Feng asked after a breath of smoke. "I just told him." Lu Feng stood up abruptly, raised his hand and slapped him in the face. A few minutes later, Wang Yueshao slapped his face, walked out with a bunch of stuff in his arms, and entered the general manager's office. Lu Feng originally wanted to see Mr. Lu, but he didn't expect that the other party was not there at all. He flipped through some reports on the table. In the short term, the situation was fine. The production and market already had their own rules, and they were able to rotate. Once more than a month, there will be big problems. Markets can also fluctuate, and other companies may emerge. Tell all the management, it doesn't matter if you don't come to the meeting, just write down your name, Lu Feng ordered. 10 minutes later, the entire management was faced with a dilemma, whether to go or not. Many people expressed that they would not go, and he would fire himself if he had a feeling. As for the fight against Wang Yueshao, it was just because of his identity as a bastard. Who doesn't know that Lu Feng used to be a jerk, and fighting is common to him, but with so many people, can he fight? There were 20 or 30 people in the conference room. Only the managers of the marketing department, the purchasing department, and the production department arrived. The others were sparse employees or supervisors. Lu Feng sat down and said, "The board of directors of the company is facing some risks. It is my problem and my responsibility. Due to the long-term neglect of management, this situation has been caused. If something goes wrong, it has to be resolved. I hope you will come here to pass a word to those who didn't come, because Lu Feng is here. GMA Food is GMA Food, not because GMA Food created Lu Feng." Some people present nodded silently after hearing this. The company has grown and grown, but Lu Feng is still the soul of this company. First of all, in my name, I will publish a statement in the newspaper that the 3 major shareholders formed by this financing will be invalidated, and secondly, the management equity will be frozen, and also, are our various chapters now missing. It's just that the financial seal was taken by President Lee, and now I can't approve any money. Then leave it alone. I'll talk about this at the meeting today, and leave the rest alone. You guys are busy with your work, and the meeting is over. Lu Feng stood up and walked out. The people present looked at each other in dismay, wondering if GMA Foods could survive the disaster. On the way back to the office, Lu Feng said to Gao Jiwei, "Call Du Kifeng and ask him to take a plane to Xiangjiang, and go through the procedure to declare that the financing is illegal. You go to the local court in the afternoon and issue a letter of determination, saying that we have the legal equity of GMA Foods can last a few days with this in case there is a dispute. Mr. Lu, the management is out of control now. I heard that Mr. Lu promised them great benefits." Gao Jiwei worried. "It's alright, just normal production, as long as the fight with Mr. Lu is successful." Lu Feng walked to the door of the office, took 2 steps back, opened the door of the general manager's office, and asked, "Which Mr. Lu is there?" "Where?" Wang Yueshao put a mirror on the table, and was applying medicine to himself. When the door was opened, he shivered in fright, covering his face. "I have no idea. You call him and say I'll invite him to dinner. The ugly daughter-in-law has to see her parents-in-law too." It's set at the Tianyu Hotel. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Lu Feng finished speaking and entered his office. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 222. As soon as the statement came out, many people began to murmur, "Does this statement have legal effect?" Immediately after, the local court issued a ruling, finding that Lu Feng had absolute control over GMA Foods. There were rumors in the local business community that the management had been colluded, and now they were monolithic. Lu Feng could not issue any substantive orders. Was emptied. In the afternoon, Lu Feng took the company seal and went to the bank to freeze all the company's accounts, prohibiting transactions. Although a few factories could not pay wages in the short term, it was not a big problem. Lu Feng is fighting for the time to pay the money, and the other side is fighting for it. The contract has been signed. Once the money arrives, the transaction is complete. If Lu Feng wants to go back, he will have to go to Xiangjiang and hire a few lawyers to go to the court. This situation was not what Lu Feng wanted. He simply froze the account to prevent the possibility of such a thing from happening. Judging from the current situation, the other party has no chance of winning, and now it is left to use the management to blackmail Lu Feng. In the evening, the Public Security Bureau issued a warning that due to the turmoil in the board of directors of GMA Foods, the surrounding security of the GMA Foods company was unstable. It will strengthen the protection of the production of the enterprise, and severely crack down on the theft of enterprise finances, burglaries, and crowd fights. It also reported 2 cases of GMA food factory administrators colluding with outsiders to steal finished beverages from the factory. Whether it is the court or the public security, it is very subtle to speak out at this time. GMA Food is a big taxpayer in the city this year, and has donated a lot, built a road, built a library, and donated a large number of tables, chairs, and stools. According to the local people, GMA Food is like glue with the local government, and has made outstanding contributions in many aspects such as jobs, economic growth, and taxation. While Lu Feng and Gao Jiwei were active, Lu Feng was still a local, and it was left to the people in Xiangjiang to do it, and it was Lu Feng, and everyone present understood it. Mr. Lu had been doing well. GMA Food was already a turtle in a jar, but the situation turned sharply in one day. He couldn't think of such a fast speed, especially when the account was frozen, and the money could not be made. The situation is very bad, and it may have failed. I underestimated Lu Feng's power in the local area. He is simply the emperor of the earth. This place has its own underground rules. What you can do now is to connect with the management. President Su, you do well. Mental preparation, I also have to prepare myself. I don't know if he is a careful eye. If so, I'm afraid I won't be able to get out of the city completely. On the phone, Mr. Liu's voice was very low, not to mention that there was indeed a problem between the equity transactions. He felt that it was a normal transaction, and people could go back if they wanted to. On the other end of the phone, Su Yorong's face was ugly. Unexpectedly, this shabby city gave her a blow to the head. The forces in the first-tier cities are crisscrossed, and no one can cover the sky with one hand, and everyone has an elbow. In such a small place, such a large enterprise as GMA Foods, no one can check and balance it, which is quite an illusion of a king of the mountain. No wonder Lu Feng wasn't in a hurry after he came back. He ate dinner first, and then went home. His feelings were the turtle in the urn. He invites you to dinner at night, you talk to him, make peace with him. We can quit without his effort, but we want factories. We can't get 12, but if we get 6, we need half the right to use them. We build them ourselves, hang it under the name of GMA Food. Su Yorong took a step back. Okay, I try to talk to him. Now I still have the capital to negotiate. Continue to collect financial problems. You can tell him that we will not prosecute in this province. We will go to Jiangsu and Zhejiang areas. He will be very powerful in 3 to 5 months, and if he is sentenced in half a year, he will wait for jail time. The right to use the 6 factories, it's my last request, understand? The two chatted for 10 minutes before hanging up. Su Yorong sat on the sofa lighting a cigarette and was a little upset. Over the years, Lu Feng was definitely the most difficult person in her heart. At 7 o'clock in the evening, in the private room of Tianyu Hotel, there was a small plate of pickles in front of Lu Feng, which clapped in his mouth. Zhang Fengxia sat across from her holding a folder, lowered her head to write from time to time, and said without looking up, "Mr. Kui wants money from you. Tell him, I won't give you any more money. What's the problem? You know the money in your mouth all day long and don't do anything at all. Let him think about how much he has done when he asks for money next time. Son, after the acquisition is completed, not a penny will be lost," Lu Feng said solemnly. After Mr. Su came, he never went out. He didn't know what to do. I felt that this woman was weird. You can do what you want. Lu Feng picked up a piece of lava garlic and put it in his mouth, chewing it. Gao Jiwei sat on the side and couldn't speak. He also wanted to take a share in Jiafeng Electronics, even if it was 0.1% of the shares, but Lu Feng refused. He looked at Zhang Fengxia and intuitively told him that Zhang Fengxia would definitely be a very important member of Lu Feng's business empire in the future, and he would guard GMA Foods. It wasn't until 7 o'clock that the private room door was pushed open. President Lu walked in, dressed in casual clothes, looking a bit refined. He glanced at the door, landed on Lu Feng, and said, "President Lu, we have been friends for a long time, but I didn't expect to meet today. Although it's the first time I've seen you, your tactics have opened my eyes. Sit down." Lu Feng put the menu in front of him and said, "You're the owner, you order." Mr. Lu was stunned for a moment, and said, Mr. Lu made a lot of statements in the afternoon. It seems that you are the owner. Then I'll be welcome. Waiter, order a table as before, Lu Feng shouted. It seems that you are already, you are just being polite to me. If you are not polite, you must be polite. What is Lu always doing? Lu Feng asked calmly. I'm in finance. Doing finance, you actually look down on me as an industrialist. You think highly of me. With this strength, you can make more money by watching Nasdaq twice more than this. It's not easy to do finance, and I want to invest steadily. President Lu's company has a very good prospect, and the growth will be huge in the next few years. It may be that our philosophy is different, which led to the current situation. What do you think? President Lu asked. The idea is not in harmony. Or are we doing two kinds of business at all? I don't want to talk to you here. I will tell you directly, this is my home court, you can't handle mine, not to mention you do everything. It's a flaw, get out of here now, it annoys me, be careful I break your leg, I know who you are working for. Lu Feng stared at him and said. Mr. Lu was a little flustered by his stare, but he calmed down immediately and was secretly surprised. Is this a young man in his 20s? Since Mr. Lu said it straight to the point, let me be straightforward. I want the right to use the factory. You do have this ability, but the evidence of your embezzlement of funds is conclusive. It may not win you here, but I will go elsewhere. What? Do you want to go to jail? Also, I would like to hear from President Lu, who am I working for? How do I know who you work for? What do you want a factory for? You're not in the financial industry. Yes, the financial downturn, invest in real business. The two stared at each other, as if they wanted to see something from the other's face. The atmosphere in the private room was very anxious. A knock on the door interrupted the atmosphere. The waiter walked in and said, "Serve the food." When the food was ready, Lu Feng picked up his chopsticks and said, "You're welcome, let's eat." I don't accept the plan given by Mr. Lu. Looks like Lu always chooses to go to jail. If you get the evidence, I admit, don't scare me, just fill in my account and pay a fine or something. That's a suspended sentence, Lu Feng said while eating the vegetables. Who are those who came out to do business these years? No probation yet? It doesn't matter if it is on probation. Mr. Liu's face was ugly. What he was most afraid of was that Lu Feng was not good enough, and his head was very iron. Can he sue Lu Feng in another province? Of course, he also got some loopholes in the accounts. It would be very troublesome to start wrangling. Seeing his embarrassed expression, Lu Feng smiled and said, "I know better than you the current domestic business environment. How many regular businessmen are there in the country? The procedures are complete, and everything is legal and compliant. Can you find out the number? I tell you, it is the darkness before dawn, and whoever is in business doesn't go to prison with 1 foot, some people have 2 feet. Mr. Lu seems to be not optimistic about his future. I'm just making a summary of the current environment. I won't have an accident. There will always be waves in the commercial sea. When a big wave is surging, it must be the boat that overturns first. My boat is big enough. Mr. Lu is so young, I've opened my eyes for such a big ship." After eating this meal for 2 hours, Lu Feng only told Mr. Lu a reality: tossing and tossing on his own site is nothing more than messing up GMA food. It may stop production for a period of time, and it may also affect the market. However, it is impossible to shake him. Lu Feng. He can give up control of GMA Foods and let Gao Jiwei and Du Kefeng manage it. If he is short of money, he may even give up the equity of GMA Foods completely. Want to grab it from him? A bit of a daydream. When I got home at 10 o'clock in the evening, Duo was already asleep, Zhang Xiaoyan was sitting on the sofa in a daze, and the TV was on and the screen was full of snowflakes. Lu Feng reached out and turned off the TV. She was shocked when she saw Lu Feng saying, "Are you back? What's the matter? Sitting here without sleeping is hysterical," Lu Feng asked. "I heard people say today that something big happened in the factory, it's very dangerous." "You just know," Lu Feng sat down and said, "I'll take care of the small problem. It smells good on me. Did you take a shower? Are you still going to the south? Come on, give me a kiss." Lu Feng hugged her and said, "Can't we chat for a while? You smell so good, I don't want to talk to you. I fell asleep a lot. Take advantage of this time," Lu Feng said and pressed her onto the sofa. "I'm here," Zhang Xiaoyan let him toss. A few minutes later, Lu Feng sat up and said, "Let's talk to each other." Seeing his unhappy appearance, Zhang Xiaoyan burst out laughing, stretched out her hand and hit him and said, "You are such a big boss, why don't you have a straight face?" High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 223. Lu Feng smiled, put the slippers aside, jumped on the sofa and asked, "Do you look like a stinky hooligan?" Zhang Xiaoyan. Lu Feng lay down on his side, yawned on her thigh and said, "The things in the factory are all trivial matters. How is your cosmetic research?" "Don't mention it, I bought a few books to see what chemical ingredients and herbal extracts it said, and then I bought these things and planned to make them at home, and I was deceived by more than 5,000. The more Zhang Xiaoyan talked, the more angry she became. The other party agreed to pay first and deliver the goods. After she gave the money, she didn't know those things. She took it back and found a professional to look at it. They said it was furnace ashes. An institute joke. Lu Feng was speechless. As expected of his wife, he wanted to develop a daily chemical product for only 5,000 yuan. This idea was absolutely incredible. "What are you laughing at?" Zhang Xiaoyan looked down at him and said with a smile on his face, "I worked very hard, I wrote down those chemical formulas, as well as the permutations and combinations. I was not bad in chemistry in high school, and the proportions were right, it can be done." "Darling," Lu Feng grabbed her little hand and said, "I beg you, don't do chemical experiments at home. Starting a business is a very expensive business. There is no response if you put millions in it. Also normal. But I spend money, it hurts." "Ha ha 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 ha," Lu Feng was completely amused by her naive look. If you have nothing to do, just get some clothes and something, buy some luxury goods, and after the new year, let's move the whole family to the south and settle down there. You bring your children back during the festivals," Lu Feng said earnestly. Zhang Xiaoyan didn't speak. Although she knew that what Lu Feng thought was difficult to change, she still didn't want to go there. The world there was too fancy. Rather than pursuing stability, she was afraid that the gap between herself and Lu Feng would widen. Zhang Xiaoyan has an instinct in her heart to limit Lu Feng's development, which can give her the greatest sense of security. The southern city is a flowery world. The more wealth and social status Lu Feng has, the less confident she is. Someone told her more than once that your man is alone in the south, and there must be no shortage of women around him. The last time she called, the voice of the woman on the other end of the phone had made her uneasy. Love or not love, this kind of thing, as a woman who is already in a marriage and has experienced domestic violence, it seems not so important. "Why don't you talk?" Lu Feng raised his hand and stroked her fair face, "when you are at home. I go back to eat on time every day, how nice. You don't seem to have gone home to eat a few times now. Let's talk about it later. I went back to your home for the new year this year. I called your mother. Your grandmother is at your house this year, and the second and third aunts are all back. There is also the uncle's family. I heard that your parents have moved into the county a few days ago, so they called me and asked me what are you doing now. You said. I said that you worked at GMA Foodstuff, and you were promoted by the leaders when you entered the factory. You are also clever, and you can sell some scrap iron from the factory. The income is very good. Zhang Xiaoyan sat cross-legged on the sofa, holding Lu Feng's the head said, tell me, I read a newspaper, the people on it look like you, and they run on people inside and out. Don't pay attention to those families, they are not as good as your family, especially my uncle. Although Lu Feng's words were not pleasant, he was telling the truth. He could only say that the best friends made a nest together. The two of them chatted about their daily routines and didn't fall asleep until after 12 o'clock. The next day, although the major newspapers reported on the board of directors of GMA Foods fiercely, everyone in the industry knew that Lu Feng had basically won it before long, and the rest was just a matter of time. At the same time, the city's legal affairs newspaper also published a headline, urging the senior management of GMA Foods to recover as soon as possible, and the two sides sat down and negotiated. The whole article is talking about employment. In a few months, it will be the new year. This report is not only about Lu Feng, but also about President Lu. In a simple and rude sentence, this year has been good, but something happened to me at the end of the year, you be careful. Lu Feng arrived at the factory in the morning, and this time the door was directly opened. The security guard already knew who owns the factory. Who has the final say in this place? Mr. Lu is here, GMA is there, and Mr. Lu is not there, GMA may really be gone. This factory has a strong personal character. It is very difficult to get rid of this person for a company established by a strong man. Wang Yueshao simply didn't come to work today, and was slapped twice by Lu Feng. He went to report to President Lu, but President Lu ignored him. Now, President Lu is struggling whether to continue fighting with Lu Feng. Although the odds of knocking down are not big, there is one point. President Lu thought about it, and handed over the final decision to Su Yorong. In the room, there were a lot of newspapers on the table, and the ashtray was full of cigarette butts. Su Yorong read all the newspapers in the past few days, and at the same time called all the relationships she knew, wanting to move. Let's take a look at Lu Feng's relationship in the city. She even made a phone call to Xiangjiang, but regardless of whether it was black or white, the result of the feedback was that this person's relationship in the local area was very hard and could not be moved. There is only one result, and that is to die unexpectedly, to successfully take his place, and to win over the forces of all parties to maintain it. As for suing him outside the country as a shareholder, it is also possible, but it is very troublesome and the effect is not so good. Su Yorong can only give up this choice. The only plan she could choose was that after Lu Feng left GMA Foods alone, he contacted the managers of the major factories through the leather bag company, so as to put the products in the factories. As for giving up the idea of playing GMA Food, it is impossible to give up such a big benefit. At noon that day, Du Kefeng, on behalf of GMA Foods on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, announced the invalidation of the financing. The reason for the invalidation was that the three companies deliberately concealed the operation of the raw ginseng, and at the same time suspected that the same person was behind the control, and there was a malicious holding situation. In less than 3 hours, Du Kefeng was arrested for smuggling and then deported back to Shenzhen. Lu Feng was speechless when he heard the news. There are still many restrictions on going to Hong Kong from the mainland. Smuggling is too common. Send an announcement to the outside world, notify all factory managers, and post it in the factory area, Lu Feng said solemnly. Don't tell me, I don't have a job right now. Gao Jiwei smiled wryly. Lu Feng took the folder aside, took out a piece of letter paper, and wrote, according to the statement of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, the financing of GMA Food Co., Limited on September 22, 1990 was declared invalid. The 3 shareholders of Tianyan Fund were kicked out of the board of directors and reserved legal means for all subsequent illegal activities, including but not limited to going to the Hong Kong Stock Exchange for accountability. After writing, he stamped the official seal and took out another piece of paper to write, the announcement of the appointment and dismissal of the board of directors of GMA Foods, the revocation of Wang Yueshao as the general manager of GMA Foods, and the restoration of Gao Jiwei as the general manager of GMA Foods, effective immediately. Take it, Lu Feng handed him 2 statements. Gao Jiwei glanced at it and said, Mr. Lu, this time, many middle-level managers have signed a co-advance agreement in private. There are more than 1,000 people in more than a dozen factories. How many managements do we have in total? I'll take it lightly. Deal with it, Lu Feng frowned slightly, and said with some displeasure, today, they will make a comeback tomorrow, and then they will dare to organize a strike later, believe it? Today's pain is so that this kind of thing will not happen tomorrow. Gao Jiwei was taken aback when he heard this. Wouldn't he want to fire half of the middle management? In doing so, GMA Foods may really collapse overnight. Lu Feng didn't say anything, just let him do the work at hand first. Wang Yueshao had a big dream, from middle management to general manager, and then to the dismissal of all positions. His life in just 10 days was really ups and downs. He couldn't accept it. The days of being the general manager were really good. It was like a wonderful dream, which made him reluctant to wake up. When he contacted President Lu, he couldn't get in touch. He also contacted a few people who were his representatives. They all said that they would leave GMA and change jobs. Someone persuaded him to leave quietly, and Lu Feng from the province settled with him. Wang Yueshao flipped through the agreements in his hand, and an unrealistic idea popped into his mind. He stood with these managements. Lu Feng was the best. He dared to fire 1,500 people overnight. Well, based on this alone, it's no problem to be a deputy general manager, right? Wang Yueshao has already thought about the good life of the emperor who has been ordered by the princes. Mr. Lu had already left, and Su Yurong was also going to buy a plane ticket to go back. There was no point in being here. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Lu Feng suddenly received a call from Zhang Fengxia. Mr. Lu, the panda thing has turned around. How to say? Secretary Kui called me and said that they had a meal with the general manager of Panda. During the dinner, Huang Yuewei chatted with him about being the general manager of Yegang Group. If he wanted to make achievements in a short time, either technological improvement, winning important awards, or making outstanding contributions to the domestic market in this industry. Outstanding contribution. Yes, Secretary Kui said, as long as you have a way to make an outstanding contribution to others in March or April next year, you can say anything, and you can even transfer technology authorization for 1 yuan. Lu Feng listened to Zhang Fengxia's words on the phone, and his mind was racing. What is outstanding contribution to the market? I'll go to the hotel in a moment and chat with Secretary Kui. Lu Feng hung up the phone and was about to leave, past Gao Jiwei's office, opened the door and said, "Tell Mr. Li to stop hiding, come back to work, and hold an all-hands meeting tomorrow." Just as Gao Jiwei was about to speak, he found that Lu Feng had left in a hurry. He sat there wondering, what happened? High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 224. There are a lot of documents on the desk in the living room, and there are several phones on the table. The little girls next to them keep on calling and contacting Shenzhen. Looking at such a chaotic environment, Lu Feng had nowhere to go, and said, "What's going on the phone?" People just say, "Let you help him make outstanding contributions." The easiest way is to increase the sales of Panda TVs in a short period of time. You can buy a batch of goods and sell them wholesale. The financing failed, and Lu Feng can't get a penny now. It's a matter of helping Panda to boost sales. After listening to Zhang Fengxia's muttering for a long time, Lu Feng also heard it. As long as the general manager can be checked by the above, the book is very good. After thinking about it for a long time, I couldn't come up with a good solution, either spending too much money, or a major breakthrough in technology. Lu Feng decided to call Huang Youwei first and ask, but Secretary Kui picked up the call. Secretary's office, what's the matter? Secretary Kui, it's me, Lu Feng. Mr. Lu, the situation is like this is the only way. People's hair is about to fall out of worry now. You don't know his current situation, his position, this age. If he can't get up, he will really get up. Not going. But you don't understand my current situation. I don't want anything right now. Is there something that doesn't cost money and effortless? Lu Feng felt a little embarrassed when it came to the end. This is difficult. Secretary Huang is back, and I will help you transfer in. The phone was picked up again, and Huang Youwei's voice came from the other end. I didn't expect you to have today. I heard some people say that GMA Food has suffered a great loss of vitality, and I just wondered who Fang Sheng could have plotted against you. There are many people who can plot against me, but those people don't want to care about me like a hairy boy. The problem is not big, and it has stabilized. I am just curious now, how can I help this general manager? The other end of the phone laughed lightly. The situation is really difficult now. As far as the other party is concerned, it is difficult for someone on the phone to handle it. His account is not good, and he has no achievements in suppressing his hands. Do you still want to go up? I think buying a TV is a good choice. It is simple and crude, and the TV can be sold cheaply without much loss. If you want to make a difference in the short term, I suggest you donate TVs to rural towns. One family. Huang Youwei's voice was full of schadenfreude. I'm really poor right now. Who are you, the famous President Lu? You have money. Not only can you help pandas, but you can also earn yourself a reputation as a philanthropist, the best of both worlds. Lu Feng was speechless listening to the jokes on the other end of the phone. After chatting for a long time, Huang Youwei felt that if he couldn't do it, don't force it and wait for the next one. Maybe it's easy to talk. After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng felt a little melancholy. He didn't want to wait. The time was tight and he knew very well that if he couldn't exert his strength in the early stage, the pressure of competition would be very high later. Financing will continue, and you can get money within the year. These are not problems. The foundation of GMA Foods has not been damaged. The value is there, and some people are willing to buy shares. After chatting with Huang Youwei for a long time, the other party also didn't seem to care much. They also told Lu Feng bluntly that once the matter of Xiaoli village was resolved, he would be better than the previous one. As for whether Lu Feng can, if he does it, the devil will take care of him. Hearing such straightforward words, Lu Feng laughed, praised Mr. Huang for being a cheerful person, and hung up the phone with a few more polite words. People don't want to help you anymore, Zhang Fengxia said while sitting on the sofa. He helped me, Lu Feng smiled. When did Huang Youwei help himself? He was always helping himself. Isn't it? He's been nice to you. I've always been good at pulling the flag. When Jin Tingting is by my side, it means that his father's shadow is on me. Forget it, let's not talk about it, I'll still think about what to do. Lu Feng stood up and was about to leave, when suddenly he turned around and said, by the way, tell Liukan that the money you gave him before will last until March next year, and the research and development will be drawn on the draft first. I'll tell him. Lu Feng pondered for a while, and asked if he had anything else to order. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Lu Feng looked up and saw Su Yurong walking in. President Lu is there. Su Yurong was a little surprised. Are you in trouble? Zhang Fengxia was also surprised, seeing her for the first time in the past few days. I originally wanted you to give President Liu a message. Since President Liu is here, I'll tell him directly. Su Yurong looked at Lu Feng and said, I'm going to leave. Lu Feng was not at all surprised by this result, it was meaningless for her to stay. Nodding slightly, Lu Feng looked at her and asked, when is the plane? The day after tomorrow. I can't touch you. I've been thinking about it for a few days, and finally I want to understand a truth. Love or not love is not a choice, but a destiny. I can't see love in you, only resistance. She was still using such lame excuses as a disguise. Lu Feng felt his scalp go numb when he heard these words, so he could only nod his head in agreement. I didn't want to face you directly, but I didn't expect to meet you, so let's talk about it. She raised her head slightly, her eyes were slightly moved, and said, goodbye. After speaking, he turned his head and walked slowly away. If this scene was accompanied by a lyrical music, it would definitely be tear-jerking, but Lu Feng was not in this state, instead he kept staring at her. Now that smuggling is rampant, domestic manufacturers can't beat foreign brands, and they all stare at smuggling to death. It can be said that they hate it to the core. Some people even shout that smuggling is maggots, eating the soul of domestic products. Lu Feng suddenly thought of something and subconsciously said, you. Ah, Su Yurong stopped and turned around with a puzzled face, is something wrong? It's okay, the journey is smooth, Lu Feng said. After Su Yurong left, Zhang Fengxia threw a document in her hand on the table, turned the pen in her hand, and teased, someone is reluctant to bear it, there is something in his heart, why don't you give me a goodbye kiss? Lu Feng looked back at her and said, do your job. What? I said it right? Some people are afraid that they will not be able to sleep tonight, and they will not be so big in the future. After all, they are young women, and we young girls are not good enough. Zhang Fengxia pressed her throat, looking very is funny. The little girls on the side were amused by her. Lu Feng originally wanted to call Huang Youwei here, but now that she looks like this, it's okay. He walked out the door and found a phone booth. What's the matter with you? My office's phone number is almost a dedicated line for you and me, Huang Youwei shouted. Mr. Huang, is the fight against smuggling a relatively eye-catching achievement? Lu Feng asked. Smuggling, Huang Youwei pondered for a while, then said for a while, forget it, it has to be a special operation. You can't be an electronics company that has cracked down on a bunch of smuggled motorcycles. It's not appropriate to regard it as your own achievements. Electronic products, and they are smuggled in large quantities, on a large scale. Huang Youwei is a little suspicious, does this kid have such resources? Asked, did you participate in something bad? Let me tell you, on a large scale, it is a felony. First of all, you need to seize a large amount of smuggled goods on the spot, and seize the main characters. No problem. When Huang Youwei heard his unequivocal answer, the first answer that came to his mind was that there was definitely something wrong with this kid, but he also knew that Lu Feng was very arrogant and couldn't even ask. That's fine, I'll ask, see if we can launch a joint special attack, let the panda take the lead, and you can help. Okay, this number is from a phone booth. You can call me when you arrive. You can't buy a big brother for such a big boss, Huang Youwei complained, you are all involved in smuggling, so you can't smuggle a big brother for yourself. Mr. Huang, you should know who I am. I just overheard some news, and I had no choice but to make this decision, Lu Feng said sincerely. Whoever believes what you say is a fool. Huang Youwei muttered a few words and hung up the phone. Outside the phone booth is a big poplar tree, the most common tree in the north, with its charred leaves fluttering in the wind, giving it an indescribable beauty. A few people riding 28 cars passed by and scolded him. Mother's cold. The autumn wind blew his bones. Lu Feng tightened his clothes, thinking to himself, this is not to cheat her, she Su Yurong is the first year of junior high school, and she can be the 15th by herself. Tit for tit. And Lu Feng realized that it wasn't Su Yorong who was staring at her, but the gold owners behind her who were staring at her. They were determined to win the factory of GMA food. Such a large-scale smuggling makes my scalp feel numb when I think about it, and the benefits are estimated to be in the tens of billions. In the last life, someone told Lu Feng that there were really many rich people in the 1990s, but some people had money. Can't get it on the table. At that time, Lu Feng still didn't believe it, but now he began to believe it. On the way home, he was thinking about how to catch this fish. Su Yorong was a cautious person. Parked the car and was about to go upstairs when someone suddenly greeted him, "Mr. Lu is back." "Ah," Lu Feng responded and nodded hurriedly. "You two are very loving, and your wife often talks about you," Fat Ant said. "Loving?" Lu Feng raised his brows and had a plan in his mind. Su Yorong didn't like to talk about relationships, so he would accompany her to have a vigorous love affair. Thinking of this, I felt a little sorry for Zhang Xiaoyan, and said, "I have to go to the vegetable market to buy some food and make a table of delicious food." Watching Lu Feng leave, Aunt Fatty sighed, how could such a good man not be his turn? The family is so rich, after every day's work, they go home and cook for their wife. When he opened the door and saw his man paralyzed on the sofa watching TV, Aunt Fatty's face was instantly murderous. 10 seconds later, there was a wailing sound from Aunt Fatty's house, resounding throughout the building. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 225. As soon as Zhang Xiaoyan came back downstairs, she was praised by several old women, and the young daughters-in-law in the next building looked at her with envy. "You don't know how much luck you have cultivated in your last life to marry such a good man." "Yeah, Mr. Lu is definitely a rich man, and he can bend down to do these things, tisk tisk tisk, the one in my family is like a pig." People say that beautiful women are the best, and people are also beautiful. Zhang Xiaoyan was complimented like this downstairs. She herself was at a loss, she didn't know what was going on, and only after asking, did she know that Lu Feng opened the door of his house, mopping the floor, and doing laundry. Looking upstairs and downstairs, a group of women stood there and praised, as if they became the standard of 3 good men in this building. When Zhang Xiaoyan entered the house, she saw the door open, and the smell of the food wafted. "Come out." Lu Feng wrapped his apron and walked out with a plate of braised chicken wings. Seeing the mother and daughter standing at the door not to come in, he said, "Come in, this is your home, don't you know me?" Zhang Xiaoyan was amused by his appearance, and said, "Your old man is making such a big noise, everyone in the building knows that you are a big boss who is mopping the floor and cooking. I heard that several houses are because of you." "Fight." "There's no way, who made me excellent, hurry up, dinner is over, duo, wash your hands," Lu Feng greeted. Zhang Xiaoyan was sitting at the table, looking at the dishes on this table, her heart was unspeakably warm. What she wanted was such a simple life, but she also knew that Lu Feng could cook an occasional meal, and that would be cooking every day. Cook. What's the fun? It's nothing, I just suddenly remembered my wife's peerless face and wanted to cook a meal. Even knowing that he was a slick tongue, Zhang Xiaoyan still blushed, stood up and said, "Close the door." "Don't tell me, I'll open the door for dinner today and let them take a look." Lu Feng put his hand on her and sat down. Upstairs and downstairs pass by from time to time, the familiar standing at the door chatting for a while, watching Zhang Xiaoyan's face full of envy. Lu Feng pretended to be polite for a long time and asked people to come to dinner. What is happiness? Perhaps happiness has always been mixed with showing off. Today's Zhang Xiaoyan feels very happy. The next morning, Lu Feng didn't go to the factory first, but went directly to the Tianyu Hotel and knocked on Su Yorong's door. When the door opened, Su Yorong saw that Lu Feng was a little surprised, and said, "Are you looking for me?" Uh. Lu Feng took a deep breath and shrugged his shoulders, looking very cramped, stared at her face and asked with a smile, "When are you going? What are you rubbing your hands for?" "It's nothing," Lu Feng put his hands behind his back and said, "Aren't you asking me to come in and sit?" An unexpected smile appeared on Su Yorong's face, and she said, "Aren't you afraid that something will happen? Come in, I have everything packed for my flight tomorrow morning." "Really leave?" Lu Feng asked while standing in the living room. "Are you kidding me here? It's interesting to pretend to say these things like this now," Su Yorong sneered, sat down and lit a cigarette. "I'm not a little girl of 18 or 9. I didn't sleep last night. I see that you are in good spirits. It's just a flashback." Su Yorong tilted her head and looked at him. "My head is full of question marks, I really can't think of it. Which one is this? Have you encountered difficulties? Isn't the matter of the factory resolved? I heard Zhang Fengxia say there is no problem. If I can help you, I will try my best to help," Su Yorong said. Lu Feng suddenly sat next to her, grabbed her hand, and said excitedly, "I don't want to talk about work. When you say you're leaving, I feel that there are intricate connections between me and you. Struggling, keeping me awake all night. Why don't you check your brain?" Su Yorong's eyes widened, looking a little scared. "There is a kind of love that I can get at any time on weekdays, and I even seem to care a little bit. When it is about to go away, I feel that it is as important to me as air." Lu Feng used his hand holding his neck, he choked and said, "I can't breathe. If you have something to talk about, you." Su Yorong took a puff of cigarette, threw it in the ashtray, and said, "You don't want me to go?" Lu Feng nodded. "Why didn't you say it yesterday? You've changed your face too quickly, haven't you? How can you say that to me? Some people turn the world upside down overnight. I've never felt such a strong feeling. Come on, take advantage of it now." Lu Feng started to take off his jacket as he spoke. "Stop, stop." Su Yorong stood up, took 2 steps back, and said, "Who do you take me for? Didn't you always think about it before? I quit. Maybe I was abrupt and rushed over early in the morning. I thought too much last night. You should refund the ticket and have a meal together tonight." Lu Feng looked at her and said sincerely. Su Yorong nodded and agreed. She really didn't understand what was going on for a while and needed time to slow down. "Then I won't bother, I still have a meeting." Lu Feng stood up and prepared to go out. When she walked to Su Yorong's side, she suddenly hugged her in his arms and looked at each other. She could feel the hot breath of the other party hitting her face, and that feeling made her a little flustered. Lu Feng bowed his head and kissed him, then retreated with a touch of water. When the door closed, Su Yorong felt her heartbeat speed up. Although it was only a slight click, it was so powerful. She took a deep breath and secretly told herself to calm down. She didn't think that a person could change so much overnight, not to mention that he still has a wife. Su Yorong grabbed her hair with her hands. For a woman who has been floating for 30 years, just now, the little heart was electrocuted. If she hadn't suppressed it with her remaining rationality, she would have wanted to throw herself into her arms and be a little woman. Yesterday's news about the conference had been passed on, and everyone in the factory was muttering about it. Mr. Lu couldn't find anyone, and I heard that the financing was completely gone. Wang Yuxiao is still insisting. He contacted a lot of people yesterday. His request is to increase the salary of the management, and at the same time, the dividend must be doubled at the end of the year, or else they will leave together. Many people murmured in their hearts, but they were all watching the wind. Who wouldn't like an increase in wages, not to mention that he was not alone. With so many people together, Lu Feng would not dare to fire him. A warehouse was cleared out and used as a temporary meeting room. The tables, chairs, and benches were already set up. People came one after another, standing there in groups of 3s and 5s muttering about recent events. After chatting for a long time, Everyone felt that this matter can only be taken advantage of, and it is impossible to lose money. Let's take advantage of this wave of trouble, otherwise it will be difficult to organize in the future. As for being fired, they didn't even think about it. Hey! Hey! Hurry up and be seated, the meeting is about to start, and President Liu has already arrived. Wang Yueshao stepped forward, followed by the other 4 people. He walked in and waved to everyone as a greeting, and the remaining 4 were somewhat lacking in confidence. Mr. Wang, aren't the demands we made too much? Would you like to reduce it a bit? The 5 of us are all vice presidents, that's possible, but it's not enough to be a partner. That Mr. Liu is really not a thing. The cowhide made a loud noise when he was making a statement. When he came back, he took care of it. I can't go back now, I tell you, these people must be tied to our warship, otherwise, that kid Lu Feng can clean up the 5 of us to death, Wang Yueshao said solemnly. The other 4 nodded one after another. Things had reached such a point that they could only fight back. Lu Feng sorted out the information at hand, met Gao Jiwei on the way to the conference room, and asked, "Is President Li back?" Today, he went back to his hometown. "Where's the big head? Are you still there?" "He's back to school. I should have called him for a meeting today. I called him and they said that his studies are more stressful." Lu Feng nodded and said, "The financing thing has to be hurry up, don't go to the Xiangjiang side, the fish and the dragon are mixed, and the average person can't play at all, so just find a few suitable ones in China. Eating a lot of money grows wisdom. I will pay attention. Our equity is still very popular in the market. In the past 2 days, there have been calls from all over the country to inquire. Be sure to check carefully, don't let the bag company take advantage of it," Lu Feng said and entered the conference room. The scene was already full of people, looking like 200 or 300, with the HR manager taking the lead in applauding. There was a sparse applause from the scene. Wang Yueshao did not sit down, but stood in the first row, with a row of tables and microphones on top, and his position was placed in the first row below, which made him unhappy. Since it represents more than 1,500 management members, they are all knocked out anyway, and this kind of thing is impossible to give in. Lu Feng walked over and looked at Wang Yueshao. He was very clear about his thoughts. Mr. Liu's capital had already left, and he had become a dehydrated fish. He had no choice but to fight the backwater. What he was betting on was that Lu Feng would not dare to touch these 1,500 people. "Okay, everyone is here. Next, let's welcome General Manager Gao to make the opening speech with warm applause." Lu Feng sat down, pulled the microphone in front of him, and said, "Why don't you 5 sit down? The pestle is like a telephone pole, what are you doing?" Wang Yueshao said solemnly, "As the representatives of the management, we should be on an equal footing with you. We choose to stand and protest against your actions of ignoring the management." Gao Jiwei was a little unhappy and was about to speak, but Lu Feng said directly, "Come on, invite these 5 uncles up and take my seat." There were only 5 tables above. Lu Feng stood up and moved away. Gao Jiwei was surprised to see Lu Feng. He knew Lu Feng quite well, and he had a bad premonition in his heart. According to Gao Jiwei's idea, the management of these 1,500 people is divided into major factories. It cannot be hard. It needs to be gradually differentiated and then come out. Now he feels that Lu Feng is hard. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 226. Lu Feng's strength is well known in the factory, and even the ordinary employees on the factory assembly line know that making such a move now makes the scene restless. Wang Yueshao was also slightly stunned, and a little afraid to go up at that time. You want to come up, I ask you to come up, and you stand still. What do you want to do? Lu Feng asked. Go on, go. Wang Yueshao took the lead and walked up, sitting behind the chairman's nameplate with a ruthless expression. The people at the scene hurriedly moved over 2 more tables and changed the brand name. Gao Jiwei then continued, everyone should know that some things have happened recently, but for us, the impact is very small. Inexperience at the time of the fundraising caused confusion on the board, which has now recovered. This is the responsibility of Mr. Du and I. We will never shirk the blame. We have already proposed to the chairman of the board to deduct the year-end bonus and 2 months' wages. However, in the management of the factory, there are also some people who have heard some wind and rain. Or being deceived. What I want to say is that the equity in your hands is a reward for the factory to motivate everyone to work hard, and GMA Food is a big family. What we have to do is to maintain this home well. We are all brothers and sisters. We can talk about anything and bring up any difficulties. I have been the general manager for more than a year and have helped everyone from life to work. There are so many things that I believe everyone can see. Gao Jiwei said a lot about how many things he has helped everyone solve from the beginning of this year to the present, and he is a good talker on weekdays. Some of the management below whispered. I see it, it's black and white. It goes without saying that they are such a deceitful group of people. After a while, President Lu will definitely threaten to be fired, and then President Gao pleads for mercy. Everyone is grateful to him. It's disgusting. Someone fired me to help us deal with life. Why not say that GMA Food's work intensity is more than twice that of other factories? Gao Jiwei eloquently talked about it for an hour, and basically it was Zai's emotion and reasoning. Next, everyone welcomes Mr. Lu to say a few words. Cough, I won't talk about it, let these uncles talk about it. Lu Feng looked at Wang Yueshao and said, the 5 of you just say, what do you have in your hands, what do you want, just order it. Then I say. First of all, I now represent the entire management, and I represent 30% of the equity. In the past, it was not only this factory, but the rest of the factories. The management was under great pressure. Of course, Mr. Lu, you are comfortable, open your mouth, the marketing department this month, how many orders to make, what products the R/U0026D department will produce this month, and how much progress. It is common for us people to work overtime. Wang Yueshao looked at the management below and said, we used to be a mess of sand, you can knead it as you want, but now I just want to tell you that we've had enough. The audience burst into applause, very enthusiastic. What we want is very simple. First, we have the right to manage the factory, and the representative must be the deputy general manager. Second, the equity dividends must be distributed in place. If we can't earn 10 million yuan, we will use 2 million to distribute them. The task index cannot be used as a decision of management to leave or stay, the value of people is diversified. Let's talk about management rights first, do you care? Don't develop the issue of equity dividends. If you earn 100 million this year, I will give you 30 million to eat and drink. Also, the task indicators are not used as the supervisor's assessment. According to, what do you see? Is it related? These can be relaxed, and now the pressure on management is too much, no one can stand it. If you can't stand it, you can leave. I will pay you as much as you want. The personnel department has a layoff target every month, and a monthly recruitment target. What we need is people who can do things, not let some people occupy some positions and hang around in the name of a deputy general manager. Lu Feng looked around and said solemnly, the management's equity, I dilute it as a reward, I have the right to take it back. As soon as Lu Feng said this, the scene was completely blown up. For them, many people were looking forward to dividends at the end of the year. Now this hope may be pinched by Lu Feng, and they instantly feel that there is not much hope. Gao Jiwei watched the restlessness on the scene. He knew the significance of equity incentives to the management, that is, his own life, not to mention them. Even Gao Jiwei was looking forward to dividends. Everyone be quiet. Wang Yueshao saw such a strong reaction at the scene. He slammed the table and shouted, "You take one and try, because we haven't united together. You can do whatever you want. The financial gap of 20 million, you must give it today." An explanation. The 20 million shortfall? Where's the evidence? Lu Feng said solemnly. Finance manager Li has run away. Everyone knows that this is the lice on the bald head. Obviously, I tell you, if these problems are not solved, we will go on strike. Wang Yueshao stood up and shouted loudly. How many people support him? Lu Feng asked towards those present. I support it. I'm afraid that he will lose a ball. Everyone is a shareholder. A 30-something got up and said with blood. I also support it. Damn, I've already had enough. Let me tell you, your management method is to push talents like us out. I support. I support. Half of the people at the scene raised their hands, and the remaining half were silent, basically some department managers, or the backbone of the top performance. Resentful people are now the most intense. Seeing so many people, Gao Jiwei's face was very ugly. He took a folder and looked at the list inside. Wang Yueshao saw that Gao Jiwei panicked, and a triumphant smile appeared on his face. Who can not panic in this situation? This is half of the management team, plus he holds the agreement for 1,500 people to advance and retreat together. As the saying goes, the big shop bullies the customer, and the customer bullies the shop. Now is the time for the customer to bully the shop. Lu Feng's face was sinking, and he put the topic on his lips and said, I will finally ask who supports him. Raise your hand, report your name, the department you are in, and the personnel, so make a note of it. The crowd was slightly uneasy and looked at each other. They thought they could scare Lu Feng by raising their hands, but they didn't expect to remember their names. Putting the pen and paper in front of him, a director of the marketing department at the front hesitated and wrote his name. After 10 minutes, more than 100 people signed the name. Mr. Lu, my conditions are not excessive at all, and I can develop for the factory. Before Wang Yueshao could finish his words, Lu Feng interrupted and shouted, all these people will be fired, and those who signed the agreement will also be fired. The audience was silent, and everyone widened their eyes, thinking that there was something wrong with their ears. Not to mention the people below, Gao Jiwei was frightened on the stage. Together, these people have opened more than half of the management of GMA Foods, and more than a dozen factories are really bear commanders. Wang Yueshao reacted, stood up and shouted, let's go, whoever is afraid, there will be a day when he begs us to come back, so let's go now. The crowd at the scene rushed out. A few minutes later, only half of the people were left at the scene. Gao Jiwei hurriedly sat down and said, Mr. Lu, this will cause a big mess, it can't be so strong, it needs to be gentle and slowly differentiated. Lu Feng raised his hand to stop him from speaking, and said, you must not only make this group of people feel pain, but also make others feel pain. Dang Duan will continue to suffer from it, don't worry, only some people are going. Those with low and middle level performance should have been eliminated. Gao Jiwei saw his look of certainty, although he intuitively told him that trouble was going to happen, he still chose to believe it. Finance, notify other factories, complete the resignation procedures for these people, and notify the personnel. Due to the large number of vacancies in management positions, there will be a large number of promotions in the near future, but there is a premise that once the supervisor is not in place, the employees do not arrive on time. Absence from work, spreading rumors, etc., will all be dismissed. A large number of hard-working employees should be promoted. For the managers at the bottom, if they dare to try, they should be replaced. At the same time, I announced that I will make changes to the management's shareholding and implement the share system. Starting from number 1, all the management have equity in their hands, and there is no right to establish an incentive equity pool, and the dilution will be diluted, because we will build the headquarters next year. Lu Feng flipped through the documents in his hand, looked at the people who were a little uneasy, and said, I originally wanted to leave this to Mr. Gao and Mr. Du, but now the market has basically stabilized, and the market is laid out step by step. Research and development of products is good, and it can be grouped easily, but I didn't expect this to be done well. Gao Jiwei lowered his head. If a major change occurs in a company, 10 Gao Jiweis are not as good as one Lu Feng. If he can't do it well, I will help him for 2 more days. The financing problem must be financed. I can tell you frankly that it is impossible for me to stay in the food industry. It is possible to quit the management, or even the board of directors. It is foreseeable that GMA Foods must find a suitable employment mechanism and run it in the next few years to find suitable managers. Lu Feng announced a series of internal reorganization mechanisms, from the selection of a person into the factory, the assessment and supervision, the promotion and salary increase, until the dismissal or resignation, which must be fully automated. It can't be impossible to operate because some people have left. This is a fatal drawback for large companies, fragmented and streamlined. In the morning, most of the management of GMA Foods had packed up and left. Such a large-scale layoff was unheard of. I heard that in some departments, there were only a dozen ordinary employees left, and all the management was fired. Zhang Fengxia studied management. When she heard the news, her mind went blank. Such a scale was like suicide. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 227. On the contrary, the people in the factory were very happy, especially some ordinary employees. They could not wait to send a goodbye to these people. The reaction from the outside world was very strong. Lu Feng emptied the entire management of GMA Foods at once. Once a lot of work was not handed over in time, serious problems could easily occur. Wang Yuxiao even said that within 3 days, GMA Foods will definitely be a mess. How can he let these people get out today? How can he invite them back? In the afternoon, Lu Feng transferred some employees of the marketing department and the advertising department to some important places such as procurement, warehouses, and goods in and out, and did a good job in handover work. First, ensure that the foundation of production, import and export, and factories can operate, and increase external recruitment. It is indeed busier, but the overall operation is not bad. These jobs are very replaceable. In the evening, Lu Feng went to various departments to take a look, and then called the major factories to ask. After a short period of chaos and order has been restored, recently these 3 people work by one person, all of which are paid 3 times as much, and many people say that they are fully capable and do not need to recruit more people. Except for the bottom-level supervisors, the middle-level management is more troublesome, especially for a department with decision-making power. This kind of management is very important. There is no problem with the general direction, it is just a matter of time to reaccumulate talents and knowledge. There is a list of expelled people on the desk. After a rough calculation, if the equity dividends are distributed at the end of the year, these people will have to take away millions and save money. Mr. Lu, here are some ideas about the headquarters after the groupization. I picked a few places. Gao Jiwei took 3 folders and put them on the table. If you have time, don't put anything on my desk. I set a target of 100 million for you this year, which is still a lot. I looked at the difference of 30 million. It is understandable that drinks are not sold well in winter. In order to increase profit margins, reduce the winning rate, and don't do this kind of thing. Lu Feng looked at him and said, 1 more bottle of this model is enough for you to play for 10 years. As long as you do a good job of anti-counterfeiting technology and crack down on those who are fake, you can continue to do it. You will learn normal competition in the market, and you have to compete in products that are dislocated. Refined competition must have a fighting spirit. If you are not convinced, you will one day find out that you are the number one in the industry. I know, the sales pressure in those 2 months was high, and it will not be in the future. I'll see later, there's a dinner party tonight. Lu Feng stood up and prepared to leave. Mr. Lu, it's almost the end of the year, isn't it? In the province, there is an award party for the Pioneer Enterprise, and you are invited to participate. I originally thought that you were in the south, and if you couldn't go, I would replace it. Now that you are back, you can go. When? In early December, there is still more than a month. It's early. That. Lu Feng turned his head and felt a little helpless, and said, after you finish talking, I really don't know how you manage when I'm not here. We are a big taxpayer in this city this year. Aren't those factories exempted from taxation for 3 years? I moved some of the local taxes to our city, and the big taxpayers will get half of the money back. What the city means is that it will be given to the legal person. Ribbons, certificates are issued, and when the time comes, they will be pulled by trucks to parade through the streets for everyone to see. Did you let me go? Lu Feng dared not think about that scene, and asked, it's also December? I'm standing on the big truck and I'm freezing to death. But this thing shows up. Stop, stop, you don't want to take care of me in the future, and say it's not me, big head, let him go, there's nothing else to do, right? We are charity ambassadors this year, we have donated a lot, attended a charity party, as well as a local chamber of commerce dinner, food industry dinner, industry exchange meeting, and the dance you attended last year. I want to invite you to this year. There are dance parties, dinner parties, and the president of the Qigong Association in the city, and I want to accept you as an apprentice. People are afraid of being famous and pigs are afraid of being strong. Lu Feng felt that in the future, he would have to hide more deeply. He frowned and said, what kind of party is so good to have something to do with business? What's the situation with that Qigong? Did you practice Qigong at a dinner party? It seems to be the case, what's wrong? This guild leader said that your qualifications are extremely high, and he can beat the Qigong master who has been for many years with a few words. He said that you have an excellent foundation, and he also said that there is a group photo of you. Some time ago, I asked a lawyer to sue and warn you. Lu Feng didn't expect that one day he would be slapped by others. He said with a wry smile, okay, let's push all the messy meetings. Arriving downstairs of Tianyu Hotel, she happened to meet Zhang Fengxia shopping at the nearby canteen. She looked at Lu Feng and asked, are you looking for me? I'm here for dinner, how are you busy with your work? As usual, there is basically no progress in recruiting people from Mr. Lu. He said that he wants to expand overseas talents, but he needs money. For the time being, he is mainly doing outline drawings and design, and as you said, the leather is durable and affordable. Color TV, who are you eating with? Sister Xiao Yan. A friend, you can do your job. It's not a problem to work here often. You can go back after a while. There is movement in the electronics factory. I will fly over there. Oh, Zhang Fengxia took 2 steps forward, then suddenly stopped and asked, what friends? Men and women. Can you humming control it? Go, Lu Feng pulled her into the lobby and let her go upstairs. Zhang Fengxia has a simple sense of justice. She was not happy with Su Yurong, and Lu Feng couldn't tell her something directly, so he could only find a way to avoid it. But there was only one decent hotel in the city, so he went up to the 3rd floor with a sigh, found a private room and called Su Yurong out. Just the 2 of us, Su Yurong asked while wearing pajamas and slippers, taking a puff of cigarette. Who do you want to see? Zhang Fengxia doesn't eat. She's at work now. Let's order food. It's quite cold today, why not? Have a drink. White beer. White. After drinking 3 dishes and 5 flavors, Lu Feng felt a little hot, took off his jacket and put it on the chair next to him, staring at Su Yorong and looking up and down. What are you looking at? Su Yorong's cheeks were filled with flying clouds, making her look even more charming. Look at your good figure, a woman like you is really ecstasy. Then you've always been very restrained. It seems that I'm not as good as you said. Otherwise, how can you hold back? No matter how many times I take the initiative to come to the door, you don't want it. I used to be ignorant. Lu Feng looked at her with a smile and said, I don't understand you, but your ticket has been refunded. Why are you asking this? Who am I? Could it be that I can accompany you in this crappy place? Su Yorong took a puff of cigarette as he spoke, and the smoke danced irregularly under the light. You are my sweetheart. Su Yorong smiled, she stretched out a light white finger and hooked it. Lu Feng tipped his head, she pinched Lu Feng's chin with 2 fingers, and said mouth to mouth, you are so cute. Ah, I'm not used to it. If you don't tell me the truth, I'll leave tomorrow. I'm short of money. GMA food has not fallen, and you can cash out at any time. 1.5 billion is not enough. The electronics factory's patent license has expired, and the other party's big talk is several hundred million. I found a relationship, and I am busy. There is news, and I want 100 million. Who wants it? Of course it's someone who does things. So you look like a pug in front of me now? I said the other day that you would beg me one day, and I didn't even think it would be so fast. Su Yorong took a cigarette while talking, and turned towards Lu Feng's mouth. Nose spit out. Cough, cough, cough. Lu Feng coughed violently and said, you said you would give me 100 million. That makes me happy. Then how can you be happy? Su Yorong thought for a while and said, don't go back tonight, let my sister enjoy it. Some things need to be discussed on the desk, some things are suitable to be discussed in bed. If you need money, just show your affection to me, but I've been running around with you for the past few months, how do you count? Lu Feng didn't expect her to raise this condition at all, and he didn't know how to answer for a while. The good side is that he doesn't have to spend money. The bad side is that Zhang Fengxia lives here and won't go back tonight. Zhang Xiaoyan will definitely ask. Let's change the hotel. What's the meaning? I think this hotel, Feng Shui is not good. Lu Feng nodded heavily and said, it doesn't match us. Hee, you look like you're cheating, I can't do it like that. I've always been curious, did you break your shoes with that Zhang Fengxia? I heard that you rely on his grandfather. No, don't talk nonsense, change place. Now you have the right to tell me these things in my face. Wherever I say it is, even in the field, in the corridor, and in the car, you have to agree. Feng Shui takes turns, and now it's my turn, Su Yorong arrogantly rode. Lu Feng's face was ugly, but he endured it, nodded and said, then I'll call home. Okay, tell her, you have to serve me. I tell you, my mother's money is not easy to earn, and now I can give you 100 million, I am afraid that I am the only one, even the bank may not be able to lend so much in a short time. Come on, you have to be obedient. I will. Go and call. After Lu Feng left, Su Yorong's face instantly sank, and her heart was a little stunned. She knew very well what Lu Feng's temper was. Just the way she said it just now, her previous words had already been slapped in the face, but now she lowered her eyebrows and pleasing to the eye. Is he really in trouble? It stands to reason that GMA Foods will have no problem in leveraging 1 or 200 million. With his character, he will not bow his head to anyone at all. Something is not right. But thinking about it again, GMA has cut so many managements, and the outside world is generally not optimistic. For Lu Feng, the electronics factory is an impossible project to give up. In order to keep the electronics factory, it is understandable to make temporary compromises. The doubts in her heart will definitely not be dispelled for a while, and further testing is needed. Lu Feng called home and said that he was out socializing and would not go back at night. After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng breathed a sigh of relief, thinking to himself, she has to endure now, only in this way can she believe that she is true. Lack of money. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 228. Back in the private room, Su Yurong stared at him, looked up and down, and asked, have the arrangements been made? Lu Feng nodded and said nothing. Let's go. She stood up and walked towards the door. Su Yurong deliberately took Lu Feng to pass by Zhang Fengxia's door. Zhang Fengxia was a little surprised when she saw this scene. Aren't you having dinner with friends? Yes. Lu Feng stretched out his hand and scratched his head, scolding the most poisonous woman's heart in his heart. Just follow her. Go on with your work, don't be too tired, let's go back to the house. Su Yurong reached out and pulled Lu Feng's arm, turned his head and left. Zhang Fengxia leaned against the door, her whole body was dumbfounded, she didn't know what happened. Back in her room, Su Yurong sat down and asked, what's wrong? Are you unhappy? No, how could it be? Oh, what I did just now wasn't quite right? Wouldn't it have any negative impact on you? Su Yurong just reacted. Lu Feng sat beside her, reached out and grabbed her hand and said, Mr. Su, don't play with me. I don't have it. Su Yurong gently kissed him on the face and said softly, it's too late for me to love you, go take a shower. I still want to talk about it, you told me before. Talk in bed. At 11 o'clock in the evening, Zhang Fengxia stood at the entrance of the corridor and did not see Lu Feng come out. But I thought about it again, it's not worth it to get my wife and estranged because of this. If I don't say it, Zhang Xiaoyan won't know. Besides, she has a weak personality. Reconcile, then blame yourself instead. Zhang Fengxia was in a dilemma. She walked to the door in a hurry, kicked her feet, turned her head and left. After a while, Su Yurong put on a pair of pajamas and opened the door. The next morning, the news of GMA Foods' large-scale dismissal of management has once again made headlines in major newspapers in the city, and several people from Wang Yueshao have also accepted some interviews, in which they angrily denounced Lu Feng and Gao Jiwei as capitalists. That is, now, a few years ago, these three words are enough to be shot. In the Hong Kong-style tea restaurant downstairs, Lu Feng flipped through the newspaper. Today, Su Yurong put on a light blue woolen jacket, white pencil pants and a pair of high-heeled shoes. Elegance. With a ruddy face, the whole person added a bit of beauty out of thin air, and it became a lot more gorgeous. You say you are just acting on your own head. With such a large-scale dismissal of the management, it's easy to collapse directly. You're still too young. Su Yurong put down the newspaper and stirred the coffee in front of him. We must kill the chickens to warn the monkeys, otherwise there will be endless troubles. I will give the bottom-level opportunities to kill these middle-level managers. As long as the bottom-level production order is not chaotic, it is only a matter of time before the middle-level management is replenished. Lu Feng folded the newspaper in his hand and ate. Mr. Lu is still an iron-blooded method. I'm not embarrassing you, but I said it doesn't count. Do you think about your company? You told me at that time that as long as I promise to vacate the factory building for you, 100 million yuan a year is sprinkled with water, and you can even pay 100 million yuan in advance. Why don't you say it again? You said it doesn't count as you staying with me for the night. What are you talking about? Didn't you stay overnight because you loved me? You took this as a condition? Did you sell it? You, Lu Feng completely understood what a face was. What are you? I have to apply upwards. I don't know whether it is approved or not. I am happy that you have been here often during this time, and the probability of getting approved is much higher. Of course, don't delay your business. Su Yorong stretched his waist and said, I'll go up and get some sleep later. Mr. Su, say something nice. The money is required before the end of the year. The electronics factory can't be delayed. As long as I can do it, it's easy to discuss. Su Yorong took a sip of coffee, nodded and said nothing. Lu Feng went to the factory after eating. Su Yorong happened to meet Zhang Fengxia when he was going upstairs. It was you who kicked my door last night, right? You are a returnee, so that's all you can do. Su Yorong squinted and said condescendingly, I don't know anything like a little girl. Can you tell me how you did it? He used to be dismissive of it. Who hasn't asked for someone yet? I used to beg him, but now times have changed. After Su Yorong finished speaking, she walked towards the room. Back in the room, she called the company as soon as possible. How is the thing you asked you to investigate? I can't find it. We don't know anyone in Panda, but some people know that Lu Feng has been working in Panda Electronics Factory through Huang Youwei recently, and it is true that the patent license has expired. We comprehensively judge that he is true this time. The situation of GMA Foods is not very good, and the electronics factory cannot be one. Many people in the outside world say that if he continues to work like this, he may destroy the hard-built GMA Foods. I want exact facts, not outside speculation. Mr. Su, it's hard to investigate these things. Since it's good for us, let's start busy. Is it possible that he can still cheat? After signing the contract, it will be a grasshopper on a rope. If Lu Feng agreed so readily at the beginning, she would have no doubts, but after such a long time in contact, she felt that something was wrong. There is a bit of evil, and if things go wrong, there will be demons, but I don't know where the risks are. Su Yorong has been doing things for so many years, relying on caution. After all, what she does in her business is safety. Check it out, spend money when you should, you know. The other end of the phone agreed. Su Yorong hung up the phone, leaning on the head of the bed. The whole person was a little dazed, originally thought that the holding was a failure. Who would have thought that Luan Huamingyu village? When Lu Feng arrived at the factory, he clearly felt that the entire factory was busier. There was an endless stream of applicants. Since yesterday, a group of people have been promoted, and the situation is basically stable. When I was passing by finance, I saw President Li coming. Lu Feng walked in and said, President Li, isn't it cool to have a vacation? Ah. Ha 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 ha, it's just a little thing for the company, President Li said casually. The company has been reorganized, and you have also been included in the partnership. Today, you will go to the bank with your official seal to unfreeze the company's account. Several factories are about to pay wages, and you will also put the latest financial statements in my office, Lu Feng commanded. Mr. Li was slightly surprised, and then he was overjoyed. He didn't expect that someone who was almost 70 years old would have the second spring in his life and career. He said, Thank you, Mr. Lu, I will definitely work hard. You're welcome. Lu Feng turned around and left. Back in the office, I called Gao Jiwei and asked about the situation of the major factories. There was a brief riot in several factories, but fortunately it has stabilized. The best way to stabilize people is to have high wages. Lu Feng has done a good job in this regard. It is expected that by the end of the year, the personnel will be almost restored. The turnover of personnel in our factory is very fast. It is for this reason that all positions are suitable for use, mainly the directors, and general managers of major factories. These backbones have not been lost. I don't treat them thinly. There is no reason to toss with those people. Yes, 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 Gao Jiwei pondered for a while and said, Mr. Lu, I have something to tell you. Don't you want to continue financing? I know a boss, they called me, said they were interested, and agreed to invest in 150 million, of course, I have a very shallow relationship with him. Gao Jiwei hurriedly explained that, after all, Lu Feng definitely did not want the board of directors to be usurped again. It was inherently risky for shareholders to get to know the general manager. It's okay, the terms of financing will be changed, the new contract will be changed, new shareholders are prohibited from launching a board of directors within 1 year, prohibiting the use of ownership rights, and prohibiting the sale of their shares. At the same time, we will guarantee their income, when it is lower than the purchase price. %50, we repurchase. Then I recently found a few lawyers to draw up a new contract, and I'll let them know. Okay, Lu Feng suddenly remembered something and said, by the way, can the province give us such a name as a leading company in the industry this year? And a well-known company or something? I didn't ask that, but we are now a public welfare enterprise. What's the use? Lu Feng waved his hand and said, forget it, I'll go to a meeting in the province and ask. If I can get such a title and print it on the product packaging, the effect is absolutely good. Gao Jiwei pondered for a while, but he had to rely on others to make things happen, and he had never thought about this kind of marketing. Recently, there has been a lot of news about GMA food, and there is an endless stream of interviews. Lu Feng pushed all of them to Gao Jiwei, and he will never accept any interviews in the future. Gao Jiwei was too busy, so he simply handed it over to the advertising department. Although Lu Feng didn't want to worry about it, he also looked at the various reports on the table, especially the financial ones. Where would he go if he had no money in finance? After looking through it for a long time, I saw a plan for advertising on CCTV. There are several advertising plans and quotations, ranging from a few million to tens of millions a year. It also wrote that Wahaha was going to advertise last year, because GMA food was caught by surprise, which led to the planned abortion, and it will make a comeback next year. After carefully looking at the slogans, duration, and quotations of several advertisements, Lu Feng chose one of the cheaper ones to sign, and the price was 8.6 million. There were several meetings in the morning. The main issue now is to stabilize the internal management. At the same time, Lu Feng is also informing the factories to make room. He knew better than anyone else that Su Yorong was actually more anxious than himself. If this happened, she would be the biggest beneficiary. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 229. Su Yorong kept getting news from various channels, and inadvertently found out where Lu Feng's home was, which was only 10 minutes away. Although Zhang Fengxia mentioned it all the time, she had never seen it before. Su Yorong secretly counted the pros and cons, and Lu Feng liked his wife very much. How patient he is, it shows how important this matter is to him. It is better to go for a walk around his house and see his bottom line. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the sky was already a bit dark, and a cold wind was blowing outside, rolling the dead leaves on the ground and flying like a steel knife in the wind. The doors and windows of the major offices were closed. When Lu Feng came out of the conference room, many people scolded 2 words that were so humming cold, and hurried into the office. Lu Feng went directly into Gao Jiwei's office, rubbed his hands coldly and said, "It's really cold this year. Ah, it's really impossible to heat up in advance, right? You can't handle it if you are a northerner, and I, a southerner, are even frozen into popsicles. The heating in our factory is on November 1st, and there are still 10 days left, Mr. Lu. Many of those managers saw the problem this afternoon. No, I want to come back. Gao Jiwei raised his head with a playful expression on his face. How sassy you were at the beginning, how embarrassed you are now, come back. Do you really think of the company as his home? Lu Feng sat down and lit a cigarette and asked, how's the financing contract going? It's preliminary drawn up, take a look at it. I called the boss to talk, and they said to consider it. Lu Feng took the contract and looked at it and nodded frequently. Although this contract is a bit harsh, GMA Foods will grow very well in the future, and some people will still accept it. The phone on the table rang, and Gao Jiwei answered the phone and said, who is it? Mr. Lu, I asked you for a guest at home. Guest? Lu Feng was stunned for a moment. He couldn't react a bit, and finally called, what's wrong? Where are you? Zhang Xiaoyan's voice on the other end of the phone was a little flustered. Where's the factory? What's wrong? Who's here? It's okay, I'm here. Lu Feng thought it was Zhang Xiaoyan's brothers or Zhang Xiaohong, so he comforted him first. Say it's your friend, Mr. Su. Zhang Xiaoyan raised her head and glanced at Su Yorong. She was standing in the living room out of tune with this family, as if this small family couldn't hold her at all. She has thorns in her eyes. People dare not look directly at her, the things on her body are very expensive, and she stands in this house with an indescribable dominance. Zhang Xiaoyan always felt that she had spent a lot of money on herself this year, but she still looked a little shabby in front of her. When Lu Feng heard that Su Yorong actually ran to his house, his head buzzed, and he was speechless for more than 10 seconds. After recovering, he became annoyed and angry, and said gloomily, you ask her to answer the phone. Hey, do you miss me? The voice on the other end of the phone was a bit teasing, but it was more of a temptation to not care. What are you doing at my house? Passing by, I just happened to have never been to your house, and your wife said she would cook for me, which is very virtuous. Su Yorong, don't go too far, make a bad hand in this area. You murdered me? That's not what you told me last night. You speak softly. I'll go back right away. Lu Feng stopped talking and hung up the phone. Gao Jiwei had never seen Lu Feng look like this. His face was gloomy and terrifying, as if he was going to eat people. He hurriedly stood up and said, Mr. Lu, what's wrong with your coat? It's okay, the financing contract will follow this. I will take care of the specifics and sign the contract in our city. Lu Feng gave a few simple instructions, put on his coat and went downstairs. When Zhang Xiaoyan heard her say that Lu Feng was with her last night, she widened her eyes and asked, he was with you last night? I'm joking. Su Yorong didn't break it. But Zhang Xiaoyan already felt something. She bit her lip and stood up and said, you sit down, the family is relatively small, don't take it offense, I bought the vegetables, it will be fine in a while. This family is indeed a bit shabby. It seems that he doesn't care much. You look quite young and beautiful. Su Yorong looked at Zhang Xiaoyan. Boss Su is very beautiful. You are the boss, not a housewife like me. I'm just like that. After so many years of messing around, I've only accumulated a few $100 million worth, and I don't even have a man by my side. Su Yorong leaned on the sofa and leaned on Erlang's legs. Cigarette. It's already a lot, and my family doesn't have much money. I'll cook first and talk to my aunt a lot. Zhang Xiaoyan stood up and went into the kitchen. While picking vegetables, she was muttering in her heart, a beautiful woman in her 30s, worth hundreds of millions, with an indescribable sadness in her heart, her eyes were falling down. Duo was very tossed at home on weekdays, but today, sitting there watching Su Yorong, he was extraordinarily well behaved. Little devil, come here. Su Yorong hooked his finger. Duo jumped off the sofa and walked in front of her. He lowered his head, glanced up, and looked at her with a very weird posture. Su Yorong looked at this little face seriously. It was really cute. But no matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like Lu Feng. After looking at it for a while, Whether it was eyes, eyebrows, nose, or ears, there was nothing alike. She burst out laughing, reached out and touched Duoduo's head and muttered, "Mr. Lu is also a pitiful person." When Lu Feng returned home, he opened the door and the food was fragrant. Su Yorong sat on the sofa and muttered something to Duoduo. When the two saw Lu Feng, Duoduo called Dad and threw themselves into Lu Feng's arms. Lu Feng patted her head and told her to go back to the house. He would call her after dinner. He took off his coat and hung it on the shoe cabinet, and turned his head to look at Su Yorong. Four eyes met, the other side smiled without saying a word, quite interesting to see what Lu Feng was going to do. "Don't tell me in advance," Lu Feng said. Su Yorong didn't expect that his first sentence was this, and it was completely two attitudes on the phone just now. She said, "I told your wife that we were together last night." Lu Feng found a small bench and sat down and stared at her. At this moment, Lu Feng had to admit that patience is an ability, and he really lacked this ability. "I'm going to the kitchen to see." When she entered the kitchen, Zhang Xiaoyan was skillfully busy. Several dishes had already been cooked. She heard someone walk in and said without turning her head, "You are a guest, so don't go into the kitchen, it will be done right away." "It's me." Zhang Xiaoyan's movements froze. At this moment, all her grievances flooded into her heart, and she burst into tears. "Don't listen to her nonsense. This person has a holiday with me. In business matters, we have to cooperate now. We ask others for help," Lu Feng whispered in her ear. Zhang Xiaoyan wiped her tears with the back of her hands, turned her head and choked, "What did you do last night?" "Drinking, with Gao Jiwei's senior executives. You know that a lot of things have happened in the factory recently. I haven't dealt with it for a long time, and it all depends on others. Don't think blindly. If you think about it, the goal has been achieved." Lu Feng wiped away her tears and said, "Don't cry, we are the most beautiful. I'm young. I'll cook and atone for my sins." Lu Feng took the spatula. After a while, Lu Feng wrapped his apron, walked out with the food, put it on the table and said, "It's time to eat, it's time to eat." "Why are you cooking? You are in this family, so have no status," Su Yorong asked in surprise. Lu Feng glanced at the kitchen quietly, and said in a low voice, "I'll cook when you come here. Usually I'm just like the uncle at home. Don't you know, I made a dish," and she cried with joy. "Do it for me?" Su Yorong felt inexplicable in her heart. She turned her head and found that Zhang Xiaoyan's eyes were red. She basically believed Lu Feng's nonsense. Calling Duoduo out for a meal, Zhang Xiaoyan looked at her. "Although she has hundreds of millions of assets, but she is young, she has so much money, doesn't she have a man by her side?" When he became confident, he became a lot more generous. Lu Feng served the two of them from time to time, barely maintaining the situation at the dinner table. It was almost 9 o'clock in the evening after dinner. Duoduo was already lying on the sofa and fell asleep. Zhang Xiaoyan packed the tableware and chopsticks. Su Yorong stood up and said, "It's getting late. I can't sleep in your place, so let's go." "Let's go." Zhang Xiaoyan came out of the kitchen and said, "You can send Mr. Su off. You can do your own thing." Lu Feng put on his coat and sent her downstairs. "Did you drive here?" Lu Feng glanced at the car and wondered, "Where is the car?" "The hotel rented it for me." Su Yorong leaned against the car. Under the dim moonlight, she exhaled a breath of white air mixed with smoke. She reached out and grabbed Lu Feng's collar and said, "Follow me, and sleep with me tonight." "Are you going to tear down my house? Looks like Lu always wants this home, not me." "That's fine, I don't know how much I have, so I'll leave and never see you again." Su Yorong spoke and opened the car door. "Don't, what are you talking about?" Lu Feng grabbed the car door and said, "I want you." "You want me, or money?" "I'm afraid it's money." "I want money, and I want you too." Boarding. Lu Feng got into the co-pilot, sat in the car and looked at the cold world outside, and his heart was also up and down. Halfway through the car, Lu Feng suddenly said, "Stop, I'm going to pee. It will be there in a while. I can't hold back." Su Yorong parked the car on the side of the road, and Lu Feng ran towards the small alley. Crossing this short alley, there was another street. There was a phone booth on the side of the street. He took out his phone card and inserted it. "Hey, who is it?" "My dear, it's me. Something happened in the factory. I won't go back tonight." "What's the matter?" "It's still about the dismissal of the management, let's not talk about it, that's all." After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng had Gao Jiwei call and tell him that if Zhang Xiaoyan asked, she would say that she was with him. After everything was arranged, Lu Feng heaved a sigh of relief. Letting her try again is definitely not the way to go. Sooner or later something will happen. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 230. Why did you run so far to go to the toilet? There's no one here, so find a place to pee, Su Yorong said, slightly dissatisfied. No matter what we say, we are also a boss, and we are also good-looking people. It's not good to be seen. Let's go. Lu Feng rubbed his hands and grinned, looking extraordinarily honest and embarrassed. It turns out that you want to be proud. Your daughter is very cute. How old is she? Su Yorong asked while driving. It's 5 years old, and the little guy is quirky and knows everything. How long have you been married to your wife? It's been 3 or 4 years, Lu Feng said hesitantly. The memory in his mind was a little confusing at first. How could he remember it so clearly, and the memory going forward was basically only a blur? Su Yorong rolled her eyes and said, "Your child is 5 years old, and you have been married for 3 or 4 years. What? Marrying your son? That should be more than 4 years." Lu Feng was about to say that Duo had nothing to do with their marriage, and the car was already parked downstairs in the hotel. "You're still smart, get out of the car and go back to your room to tell you something." Lu Feng pondered what she was going to say in his heart. When he entered the room, Su Yorong made a pot of tea, sat down and lit a cigarette, watching Lu Feng spit it out in a dashing manner. "Do you like her?" "Who?" "Your wife." "I can't tell. At the beginning, it was because of pity for her. She is afraid of everything, but she has to face life. I'm so lucky to be a man and can help her relieve some of her burdens, but today, speaking from her heart, she is a housewife, doesn't help me at all in the business field," Lu Feng said truthfully. "What about me? Of course you can help me in business, but I feel sorry for her." "You don't have to be sorry for her. Didn't you find something?" "What's up?" "Your daughter is nothing like you," Su Yorong said seriously. "I even suspect that it is not your child at all. You can do a paternity test." Lu Feng was dumbfounded. Duo was not his own daughter. His mind was spinning fast. Obviously Su Yorong didn't know Duo was adopted, and 10 seconds was a long time. All this showed in Su Yorong's eyes. He was shocked and unwilling, and he guessed it right. "I've done a paternity test," Lu Feng said slowly. "Is that your daughter?" "It says that we are not related by blood." Lu Feng thought for a moment and said, "My wife told me that the reason for this is because I smoked and changed the genes of the next generation." Cough, cough. Su Yorong choked on a puff of cigarette and threw the cigarette in his hand into the ashtray. Seeing Lu Feng's face full of laughter, he asked, "Do you believe this kind of nonsense?" "I don't understand either. This is high technology. I went to elementary school and I don't understand this. I didn't even go to elementary school. I know that genes are divided into genetic genes and imaging genes. How can smoking change the genes of the next generation?" "Obviously she lied to you." Lu Feng stared at her and asked curiously, "How do you know this?" Su Yorong's face froze, and she shouted, is your focus not right? She's wearing a cuckold for you. I'm green. Lu Feng covered his face with his hands in disbelief, as if the news was a bolt from the blue for him. Actually, I can understand how you feel now. Lu Feng finally squeezed out a few tears and asked curiously, why do you feel the same way? Have you experienced it too? You're all green, still humming care about me. Lu Feng leaned on the sofa with dull eyes, tears streaming down his cheeks, and his eyes were full of heartbreak. At this moment, it seemed that all the movie stars were blessing him, and that state made the sad listeners cry. As a man, I'm sorry. Su Yorong lay gently in Lu Feng's arms and whispered, I'm here, don't worry. Lu Feng reached out and hugged her in his arms, muttering to himself, I want to divorce her. Su Yorong raised his head and saw a ripple in his eyes, and asked, then you? I marry you. We are a perfect match. We will form a family and have a lovely child, but you can't lie to me. Lu Feng looked at her sincerely. I will never lie to you. Then tell me, what's the matter with the scar on your stomach? I don't read much, so you can't lie. I think it's the scar left by the cesarean section. What nonsense are you talking about? Su Yorong rolled her eyes at him and said, appendicitis surgery, don't worry, how could I lie to you and report me to bed? Lu Feng stood up, picked her up and put her on the bed, and then flew up to him. The next day, at 7 o'clock in the morning, Lu Feng turned over in a daze. Su Yorong drilled into his arms, and his long hair drifted into Lu Feng's nostrils with an indescribable fragrance. Lu Feng sat up and glanced at the time. It was time to go home and sleep during the day, otherwise Zhang Xiaoyan really couldn't explain it. Why are you going so early? Su Yorong reached out and grabbed his arm. I should go to work. I don't want you to go to work, I want you to accompany me. Lie down. Su Yorong opened her eyes and gave orders. Seeing that he didn't move, she said dissatisfiedly, are you disobedient? Lu Feng had no choice but to lie down again. She put her head on her chest and then closed her eyes with satisfaction. If only I could live like this every day. Then I can't work. You don't want to work. When the time comes, I will merge all the factories into my name. You will cook at home every day. Your cooking is really delicious. Su Yorong raised her head to look at Lu Feng and said, when will you make a special meal for me? Then we have to deal with the affairs at hand and divorce her. Since we are already one, can you give me some money first? Isn't it just money? Seeing how good you are, let's talk. How much? Lu Feng didn't expect her to be so happy, and said overjoyedly, 100 million. 100 million? Why should I give you 100 million? Su Yorong exclaimed. Didn't you say that we are married? We are one piece. Will I put the factory in your name? You think so well, you are not willing to give me a mere 100 million yuan? You know that I am short of money right now. Lu Feng reached out and took his pants and said, liars, women are all liars. That's not what I meant, don't be angry. Su Yorong hurriedly pulled him and said, 100 million is not a small amount, and I said it doesn't count. I have 2 million in my card. Take your 2 million to send beggars. Sure enough, what I said just now is so hype, I don't recognize it now. I'm still thinking of handing over GMA Foods to you and working hard on GFeng Electronics. After all, GMA Foods, it's on the right track. Lu Feng's face was full of disappointment. Caramel for yourself? Su Yorong was slightly surprised, and hurriedly got out of bed and hugged Lu Feng in her arms. I didn't mean that, don't be angry, it's not that I can't give you 100 million yuan, there is a premise. What premise? My goods have to go into your factory, or it's useless to say a smallpox. Then go to the factory. You agree? I'm all yours. Lu Feng looked at her and said. Su Yorong stared at Lu Feng and let out a chuckle. This laughter was from the heart of happiness. After working hard for more than half a year, it was finally done. Besides, She also gained a boyfriend who was in her 50s or 60s. So many assets in their own name. She thanked Zhang Xiaoyan deeply in her heart. If Zhang Xiaoyan hadn't made him green, Lu Feng would never have agreed so easily. All of this was with revenge, deep revenge. Then I will do it as soon as possible and try to get it done within 2 months. 2 months, Lu Feng shook his head again and again. Can you shorten the time? I can't wait that long, or give me the money first and I'll plug the panda's mouth. 10 days, Su Yorong reached out and touched Lu Feng's cheek, kissed lightly. It's not that I can't trust you, it's really what I said, I won't lie to you. Then in 10 days, I will go to the factory for a meeting today, and let them make room to prepare for the purchase. You must put a little more. Don't worry, the cargoes that came before are all stacked in the warehouse at the port, just to make room, then I'll book a flight ticket. Lu Feng nodded. The two of them had breakfast after washing up, and each was busy. Lu Feng went home and told Zhang Xiaoyan that there were too many dismissals from the management, and something went wrong. Now I am not only busy with the work of the chairman, but also the general manager of several departments. I have been busy for a while. Zhang Xiaoyan was not a fool, she could sense something was wrong, but she didn't say anything, she just asked him to rest early. Taking advantage of the time when Zhang Xiaoyan sent Duoduo to school, Lu Feng called Gao Jiwei to confirm that she didn't look for herself at night. I didn't call, Mr. Lu, what's wrong with you? Gao Jiwei's curiosity was overwhelming. He told his wife last night that what could a big man do if he didn't go home without his wife for a night? I'm fine, didn't I have a meeting the day before yesterday about vacating 1 or 2 warehouses in the major factories? You call all the factory managers, and they will be done within a day or 2, and the goods will arrive in 10 days. What is it? What do you care about? It has nothing to do with you, just do as I say, Lu Feng said solemnly. Gao Jiwei agreed to deal with it, but he was still muttering in his heart, wondering if he should tell Zhang Xiaoyan about this, so that nothing major would happen. After thinking about it again, Mr. Lu of the province blamed himself. Lu Feng hung up the phone and called Huang Youwei again, but Secretary Kui picked it up. Where's Mr. Huang? Lu Feng asked. Go down for a meeting, I'll be leaving in a while. What's up with Mr. Lu? That's what I have arranged here. The special operation I mentioned earlier can start. You can inform the panda side. 10 days later, you can call me when the time comes. Okay, I'll say after the meeting. Mr. Lu, tell me something, do you owe my cousin, Kuining, money? Ah. It's not a debt, it's an agency fee, what's wrong? He has a tight life. He told me several times, don't look at him as a big man, and he is very poor. He cried when he called about it, saying that he was afraid that you would not give it. If you get a monk, you won't be able to run away from the temple. You can't run away from the temple, you can do a good job for a lot of money, and you don't need to be yin and yang. Lu Feng hung up the phone after he finished speaking. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list.